Okay, let's keep going with our forces. And the next one is very simple, and so simple that it's actually not really useful for pop simulation. So I think we will not use it in the pop part of the course, but later on it can be helpful. And this is pop attract. And pop attract is really just attracting the points to a particular point in space. So if I just drop a pop attract, so first of all, what we have here is a simple sphere and we source on it, nothing special. Let's turn off the guide and we have just a couple of points, no gravity, that's scattering on the surface of our sphere here. And if I add a pop attract, you can see instantly what it's doing, because it attracts by default all those points to the center. So especially in the beginning, you can see what happens. So here the pop attract has a goal position where the points try to go to. And when you press enter in the viewport, you can actually move that position, let's say over here, because then we can see a problem with that node that is very important to understand. And that's the following. If I press start, you can see, oh great, all the points are actually attracted to this point, but then they shoot over the point because the point is not stopping them from moving through it. It's just accelerating it in that direction. And when we lower the amount of points in our pop source, like this, we can actually see another thing that is the result of that. When they overshoot over the attraction point, they then still have a velocity, which is then attracted again by the point. So they move backwards and the whole thing happens over and over again. And it comes, what happens is some kind of oscillation. So the points move back and forth always through this point. Now, this is not really what we expected when we thought about points are attracted by a point. We expected that they would kind of end in that position. And this is exactly the problem with this node. Now, there is a built-in system that tries to prevent that, but it doesn't work very well. And that is the reversal distance. So the idea here is, of course, that you can change the scale of the force, and then you have a distance in meters that defines when the point should kind of stop before reaching the position, and actually kind of slow down or accelerate in the opposite direction. Now that sounds great, but in practical terms, it usually doesn't work. So you can see here, even if I have the reversal distance of 2, basically what happens is I'm slowing the whole thing down a little bit, but it doesn't really work that well. The problem is that I can't really increase the strength of the reversal, and this is why this is not that useful. What I can do is I can define an area where the maximum acceleration stops and the reversal starts, and that is peak force distance and then combined with reversal distance. So the peak force distance means the highest it will be 2 meters away from my point, and then it will slowly go down until it reaches the reversal distance where it will reverse. And even that doesn't really help solving this problem. So my point here is, no matter what this node suggests, you cannot solve this problem of points that shoot ahead of the goal. Later on, we will see we can actually solve this problem, and that is simply by letting those points collide with each other, because then they kind of slow themselves down, and then the whole problem is not that prominent anymore. But for now, I just wanted you to know that this node exists. As you can see, for points, it's a bit less helpful than it seems. Without any kind of collision, usually this is problematic. One way to make this force a little bit more interesting is to just combine it with other forces. So for example, a good old pop force that just adds a lot of turbulence to the whole system is usually a good idea. And then the whole thing at least becomes a little bit more interesting, because they're not just, perfectly going towards a particular point in space, but you can kind of give the impression that they move towards a point, so they never really move away from it, but they are still a little bit filled with chaos. And you can see this feels a little bit like flies or something like that. And you can also use it for stuff like this. Now, one thing this can do as well, though, is you can invert this. By putting the force scale to negative, we can just make an outward force, which we can do with other forces as well, but just keep that in mind. You don't always have to attract the points. You can also push them away, which in some cases might be what you want. So that's another option of that node. So yeah, that's the pop attract node. As you can see, easy to understand, but unfortunately a bit hard to master. It will make more sense in the later chapters to use this node, but at least I wanted you to know that a simple force like this actually exists. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks very much and see you later. Cheers.